Modeling quadratic functions. So when we want to write an equation into standard form, we're actually going to use quadratic regression on the calculator to do that. So first I want you to write down these 3 steps. Step 1, we're going to go into Stat and then choose the first option to edit. We're going to type our data into L1 where we're going to put the x values, and then L2 where we put the y values. Then step 2, we're going to hit Stat, go over to Calc, choose the 5th option, the quadratic regression, make sure that our x list is L1 and our y list is L2, and then hit Calculate. Then we're going to write down our equation substituting the values of a, b, and c into the standard form of the quadratic. So I want you to pause, make sure you write down these steps so that you have them, and then check back with me when you're finished to do the first example. So hopefully you wrote all that down. Now before we move over to the calculator, I want you to write this down in your notes. Our first example, we're given 3 points of the quadratic: -2, 0, -1, 2, and 3, 0. Okay, so now we're back into our calculator. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to hit our Stat button and then choose that first option to edit. And in L1, you want to type in your x value. So we have -2, and then -1, and then 3. Scroll over to your L2 for your y values. We have 0, 2, and 0. Make sure you put those in the correct order. And then we want to hit the Stat button, move over to Calculate, and then choose the 5th option, the quadratic regression, and then hit Enter. Then you have your equation. In the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, we have a equals -0.5, b is 0.5, and c is 3. So we're going to come back here, and you should be on your notes paper now, and write our equation as y equals -0.5 x squared plus 0.5 x plus 3. And this is your equation. Now for standard, we have to use the calculator. These decimals aren't too bad, and we could change those into fractions, but some of the examples that we work with are not going to have such pretty numbers for decimals, and so you can leave them as decimals. Let's walk through one more example together. It says a bank adjusts its interest rates for new certificates of deposit daily. The table shows the interest rates on the first month for January, or on the first of the month for January through May. So it gives us the month and the rate. So when we put this into our calculator, we're going to use the month as our L1 and our rate as the L2. So we want to write the best fitting quadratic model for the data. That's the equation that the calculator gives us. And then we'll move on to part B. So go ahead and write down these values at least so that we can switch over to the calculator and find our best fitting quadratic model. So when you switch over to your calculator, remember our first step, we want to hit Stat and choose that first option to edit. And you probably have your data from the previous example problem. So remember, scroll up to the top and then hit Clear, Enter, and then we want to move over, scroll up to the top where it says L1, hit Clear, and Enter again. Now they're empty, so we can add in our new data. So for L1, we're putting in our months. We had month 0, month 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we were putting our interest rate into our L2 column. So we have 3.9, and then 4.4, 4.6, 3.8, and then 3.1. And again, when you're finished entering your data, take the time to double check and make sure you put everything in correctly, that the pieces of data line up so you have the same amount of data in each column, and that the numbers are typed in correctly. If you forgot a decimal point for any one of these, it would completely throw off your equation. So make sure you're very careful about that. Now, after we've put in our data, we want to hit Stat, move over to Calculate, and the fifth option, Quadratic Regression, hit Enter, and then here's our equation. So this is what I'm talking about. These decimals are not so nice. So we're always going to round to the nearest hundredth. So remember, that means you write 2 digits, but you might change that second digit if the third one is 5 or higher. So now we're back to the notes, and we can write down the equation that we had. So with rounding, y is equal to negative 0.24 x squared plus 0.75 x plus 3.91. Now we can move on to part B. It says, using the best fitting quadratic model you found in A, find the interest rate for 5 months. So remember, we used our month as our L1, which was our x coordinate. So we're just going to take our quadratic from part A, and we're going to find what the rate is going to be at 5 months. So we'll take 5 and substitute that in for x. Now after you substitute it in on your paper, sorry, I forgot to substitute this one in. So let me change that x to a 5. Once you plug in your value, you can go ahead and put this entire side into the calculator. So make sure you type this into your calculator very carefully. And again, as I've said over and over and over again, you need to make sure anything in parentheses shows up in parentheses on your calculator. Once you plug that all into your calculator, hopefully you got an answer of y equals 1.66. So that's going to be the interest rate at the 5th month. So I want you to go ahead and try this example on your own. Take these 3 points that are on the quadratic, use your calculator, follow the steps, and find the best fitting quadratic model, and then check back with me when you're finished. Hopefully you found your equation to be y equals 2x squared plus x minus 4. That's it for these notes. I'll see you in class.